Okay, this lesson is on dividing polynomials. Now, there are multiple ways to divide polynomials and even more complicated ways than we are going to learn in this lesson. There is long division, in which you are dividing by a binomial whose leading coefficient is greater than 1. So for example, if we look at this example here, long division would be used if I was dividing by something that had a coefficient in front, like maybe a 2x, or a 4x, or something. That you would have to use long division. But for this lesson, we're only going to stick with synthetic division, because synthetic division is probably the most widely used form of division. So we're going to stick with that, though probably during the school year you probably learned both ways of doing it, though you were only tested on synthetic division. So synthetic division is one of those weird things where it's a completely sort of foreign thing that you've done that you haven't done. Basically, you are trying to figure out what is let me see here. Yeah. What is this divided by this? And what you do is one of the things that you do is called synthetic division. But basically, you take out all the variables, and this is right here. This is called the dividend. Just for all purposes of vocabulary, so you know what I'm talking about. The dividend is what's being divided, and the divisor is what you're dividing by. You need to find what makes the divisor 0. What value of x would make the divisor 0? What would make this term here, what would make this term 0? What value for x would cause this to be 0? And it turns out that it's always sort of the opposite of this, because if it's positive 3 and negative 3, it's 0. Or positive 4 and negative 4, it's 0. It's always the opposite. So it ends up being 3. So what we do is we take that number and we put it in the corner. Then we look at all the coefficients of all the numbers of the dividend, and we write those down. 1, 6, and 12. We draw a line a little bit below. We got to give some space because we're going to fill in this space right here. Step 1, bring the first number down below. And then what you do is you multiply whatever's down here to whatever's up here, and it goes here. So 1 times 3 is 3. And then you add straight down. 6 and 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. 12 and 27 is 39. When you get to the end, the very last number serves as your remainder. And so the answer is whatever your degree was before. This was an x squared. It always decreases by a degree. So now that's x. So 1x, or x, plus 9, plus the remainder. And the remainder will be whatever you got over whatever it was you were dividing by. Okay? So, let's recap. Figure out what makes your divisor 0. It tends to always be just the opposite here. So 3 goes here in the corner. You write out your dividend without any of the variables, 1, 6, and 12. And then you bring the first number down. 1 times 3 is 3. 6 and 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. 12 and 27 is 39. Because this was an x squared, it decreases by a degree, so now it's x. So your answer is x plus 9 plus the remainder, which is 39 over x minus 3. Let's try another one. If it's a little confusing, it's okay. You'll get the hang of it. It just takes a little bit of practice. So, step 1, figure out what makes your divisor 0. Again, it's usually the opposite sign, so it'd be positive 2. We write down all of the numbers without the variables, draw a line, give some space, drop down the first number. So 1 times 2 is 2, negative 10 and 2 is negative 8, negative 8 times 2 is negative 16, and 2 and negative 16 is negative 14. That last number serves as our remainder. Since this was an x squared here, it now decreases by a degree to x, so that's x minus 8, and then plus the remainder of negative 14 over x minus 2. Now you certainly could, if you don't want to use plus negative 14, you could certainly use minus 14 over x minus 2. I just always put plus, and then whatever the sign is, it is on top. So completely up to you. And you can do it for even more terms, like an x to the third. You can even do x to the fourth. You know, it keeps going here. But basically, what makes our divisor 0 is a negative 2. So negative 2 will go in the corner. We write all the numbers without the variables. Drop down our first number, 1. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. 4 and negative 2 is 2. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. 6 and negative 4 is negative 2. Negative 2 and negative 2 is 4. 4 and 4 is 8. And that serves as our remainder. Since this was an x to the third up here, this drops down now and is 1 degree less, which is x squared, which means that this is x squared plus 2x minus 2 plus the remainder of 8 over x plus 2. And that's division. Now, one little thing that you might run into is an example like here with number 7. So here in number 7, it starts out the same, where you figure out what makes your divisor 0, which is negative 3. But the problem is when you go to write your dividend without the numbers, you'll notice that it skips a few terms. It goes right from x to the third to the negative 54. There is no x squared or x. The problem is that with synthetic division, you have to have all of your terms. So if by some chance it skips a term, like it's missing an x squared or x, like it skips over terms, you need to fill those placeholders with a 0. So the 2 will go in for the x to the third, but there is no x squared, so that's a 0. There also is no x, so that is a 0 as well. And then the negative 54. That is important and is a common mistake when doing synthetic division. Drop down your first number of 2. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. 0 and negative 6 is negative 6. Negative 3 times negative 6 is 18. 0 and 18 is 18. 18 times negative 3 is negative 54. Negative 54 and negative 54 is negative 108. And that serves as your remainder. So my final answer, since this was starting out as an x to the third, it will drop down a degree of x squared. So 2x squared minus 6x plus 18 plus a negative 108 over x plus 3. So that is synthetic division.